It was early October in a small town in Vermont, the trees dressed in golden red, and the breeze carried the scent of falling leaves and distant campfires. Emily Carter, a 20-year-old literature student, walked home from the university library, her journal pressed tightly to her chest. Emily wasn't the kind of girl who fell in love easily. She had watched her parents' marriage crumble when she was just 10, and since then, she guarded her heart like a secret treasure. But when she met Jake Thompson, everything changed. Jake was different. He was quiet, thoughtful, with eyes that always seemed to be searching for something deeper. They met during a campus poetry reading. Emily had shyly read a piece about heartbreak, and when she stepped off the stage, Jake approached her. "That poem," he said, "felt like something I've been trying to say for years." That night, they walked under the orange streetlights, sharing stories and fears. Jake had lost his brother in a car accident 2 years ago, and Emily shared how her father's abandonment still haunted her. They connected not because they were perfect, but because they were broken in similar places. For weeks, they spent every free moment together. Study sessions turned into late-night talks. Rainy afternoons became shared coffees and old movies. Emily had never felt so safe in someone's presence. Jake never rushed her. He didn't ask for more than she was ready to give. One chilly November evening, as they sat on a park bench under a rustling oak, Jake turned to her and asked, "Do you believe love can heal what's been broken?" Emily looked into his eyes, filled with sincerity and pain. Her heart ached in the best way. She reached for his hand and whispered, "I don't know, but I want to find out with you." They didn't kiss then. They just sat, hand in hand, hearts slowly learning to trust. Months passed. There were fights, tears, and misunderstandings, but also laughter, hugs that lasted too long, and phone calls that ended with sleepy "I miss yous." One spring morning, Jake surprised her in the library with a note folded like a paper crane. Inside it read, "To the girl who taught me that love doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be real." Emily cried quietly that day, not because she was sad, but because for the first time in her life, she realized her heart was full. And sometimes, in the smallest towns and quietest moments, love writes the most unforgettable stories. Emily and Jake had grown up in ways only time and love could teach. Their small apartment had creaky floors, mismatched furniture, and a coffee pot that always leaked. But it also held laughter, dreams, and two hearts learning to beat together. Emily now worked part-time at the local bookstore, writing in the quiet hours between customers. Jake was a graphic designer, often hunched over his desk sketching while music played in the background. Life wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. One rainy Sunday afternoon, the kind where the sky stays gray and the world feels softer, Emily sat by the window watching droplets race down the glass. Jake walked over with 2 mugs of tea and sat beside her. "Remember that first poem you read?" he asked, wrapping his arm around her. Emily smiled. "The one about heartbreak?" "Yeah," he said. "You don't write poems like that anymore." "That's because," she replied softly, "you helped me rewrite the ending." Jake looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her heart skipped. He didn't kneel. He didn't make a speech. He simply opened it and said, "I don't need a perfect moment. I just need you. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Emily's eyes, not because she was surprised, but because it felt so right. So quiet. So true. She whispered, "Yes." 3 years later, the old town hadn't changed much, but they had. They now lived in a small house with a garden, where Emily grew daisies and Jake built a wooden bench under the trees. She published her first book of poems. He opened a design studio. And on warm spring nights, they would sit under the stars, fingers interlocked, hearts still whispering promises. Because sometimes, love doesn't arrive with thunder. It grows like roots under snow, quiet, strong, and waiting for spring. Final line. And when people asked Emily what love meant to her, she would smile and say, "It means staying, even when it's easier to walk away." By the time winter arrived, the whole town looked like it had been painted in white silence. Snow blanketed the streets, and everything seemed slower, gentler. Emily and Jake had now been together for 6 months. But something began to change. Jake had become distant, not cold, but quieter. He still held her hand, still smiled, but his eyes sometimes wandered, lost in thought. Emily noticed, but said nothing. She had learned that love wasn't just about being close, it was also about knowing when to give space. One evening, Emily invited him over for hot chocolate. Her dorm window fogged up with warmth, but Jake didn't say much. He just sat, watching the snow fall outside. Finally, she asked gently, "What's wrong, Jake?" He turned to her slowly. "I got accepted into an internship in California. It's a big opportunity. It's for 6 months. I didn't know how to tell you." Emily's heart dropped. It felt like someone had stolen the breath from the room. "When do you leave?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Next week," he said. Silence. Her hands trembled as she held her cup. 100 thoughts raced through her. What if he didn't come back? What if the distance changed everything? What if this was the end? Jake reached for her hand. "I don't want to lose you, Em." She looked at him, tears filling her eyes. "Then, why does it feel like you're already gone?" He pulled her close, and she melted into his chest, sobbing softly. That night, they didn't talk about the future. They just held each other, like two hearts trying to hold on to a moment before it slipped away. 1 month later, Emily stood outside the post office with a letter from Jake. He wrote every week, even though they video called too. But he said letters felt more personal, like memories you could hold. "I miss the way you look at me when you're pretending not to smile. I miss your poems. I miss us. But I'm working hard for us." Emily smiled through tears. Every word he wrote felt like a thread pulling him back to her. 6 months later, Jake returned on a warm June evening. Emily was waiting at the station, her hands nervously twisting the ends of her cardigan. When she saw him step off the train, tired but smiling, she ran to him without thinking. He dropped his bag and caught her mid-run, holding her like he'd never let go again. "I kept everything," she whispered into his chest. "Even me?" he asked. "Especially you." They kissed then, not the kind of kiss that makes fireworks explode, but the kind that made everything else in the world go silent. Jake never left again. He finished college near Emily. They got an apartment with a tiny balcony, where they planted flowers and watched the seasons change. Because some love stories don't need a dramatic ending. They just need two hearts willing to hold on, even when it gets hard. And Emily learned that the strongest kind of love is the one that quietly stays.